Facing a midlife crisis? Find courage in everyday women's stories. Subscribe to Resilient Women Rising.
The Forged Postscript. How a 54-year-old married woman turned betrayal into family healing. Mary Ann Holt adjusted the china plates on the dining table as twilight settled over the suburban neighborhood. The golden glow of the chandelier revealed fine cracks in its crystals, an inheritance from her husband Ethan's family, passed down for generations. At 54, Mary Ann prided herself on keeping the Holt home tidy and welcoming, even as tension simmered beneath the surface. Tonight's dinner would be the ultimate test, a rare family gathering with Ethan's mother, Sylvia, whose cold courtesy had grown into outright distance over the past year. For months, Mary Ann had sensed Sylvia's subtle disapproval, dismissive remarks about Mary Ann's cooking, pointed comments about how she raised Ethan's niece, and a disquieting rumor whispered to neighbors questioning Mary Ann's devotion to Ethan. Mary Ann's evenings since discovering these murmurs had been haunted by guilt and confusion. She loved Ethan fiercely and had tried to bridge gaps, but every outreach, handwritten notes, invitations to brunch was met with polite deflection. Now, at the invitation or perhaps obligation of Ethan, they would all sit in this room together. The aroma of rosemary roast and baked apples filled the air, a hopeful attempt to evoke warmth. Outside, wind rustled through oaks, as if nature itself held its breath. Ethan arrived first, lowering his briefcase gently by the entrance. His shoulders bore familiar tension. As a corporate lawyer, he was used to negotiations, but family negotiations felt infinitely more fraught. He kissed Mary Ann's cheek. "Ready?" he whispered. Mary Ann nodded, smoothing her skirt, her heart hammering. She remembered how close she'd once been to Sylvia early in their marriage. Sylvia had praised Mary Ann's empathy and praised her ambition to launch a small community project. But after Ethan and Mary Ann moved farther from the city to care for Mary Ann's aging father, something had shifted. Sylvia had voiced concerns, first gentle, then sharper about distance, about Mary Ann's priorities, implying that Mary Ann's choices threatened family bonds. Now the moment had come. As the doorbell rang, Mary Ann inhaled and opened the door to Sylvia, who stepped inside with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. The hostess and Mary Ann kneeled to offer a hug Sylvia accepted with measured grace, her perfume a faint note of lavender. Behind her, Ethan's younger sister, Claire, hovered, caught between loyalty to her mother and affection for Mary Ann. Claire's presence both comforted and highlighted the fragility of alliances in this room. They seated themselves around the table. The first courses progressed in strained politeness-like conversation about Ethan's latest work trip, Claire's career developments, and the children's school events. Mary Ann watched Sylvia lift her fork with slow deliberation, as though tasting not only the food, but weighing every word. Then, over roasted vegetables, Sylvia's voice cut through the warmth. "Mary Ann, I received a letter from an old friend in our hometown. She mentioned some concerns about how you manage family obligations since you moved. Surely you understand how difficult it is for us, being so far apart." The implication hung heavy. Had Sylvia been feeding rumors rather than seeking truth? Mary Ann's chest tightened. She swallowed and met Sylvia's gaze. "Mother, I've tried to stay involved. Calls, video chats, visits whenever possible. If there's something I've missed, I want to understand." Her voice trembled, but she held firm. Sylvia's eyes flickered as if weighing whether Mary Ann's plea was genuine or rehearsed. Claire looked between them, unease flickering in her expression. Ethan reached out, placing a hand over Mary Ann's wrist, a gesture of solidarity, but also uncertainty. Before Sylvia could reply, Mary Ann noticed a folded envelope at the place setting before Sylvia an ornate stationery she didn't recognize. Sylvia lifted it calmly and opened it, glancing at Mary Ann as though testing a truth. Mary Ann's pulse quickened. Had Sylvia orchestrated this letter to provoke confrontation? The flicker of hesitation on Sylvia's face hinted at secrets underlying this tension. Sylvia read aloud in measured tones a letter from Marianne's early days in their hometown, praising her community work, yet the handwriting beneath revealed a postscript Marianne had never written. The postscript suggested Marianne had once considered abandoning family responsibilities for personal ambitions, a false memory, or perhaps a manipulated note. Marianne stared, stunned. If this letter was fabricated, it meant someone had gone to great lengths to cast doubt on her character. But who and why? The room fell silent, cut by the crackle of the chandelier light. Marianne's throat felt tight. She realized this gathering had shifted. It was no longer a dinner, but a tribunal for her reputation. If Sylvia truly believed this postscript, Marianne's efforts to explain would require unearthing buried truths and confronting long-buried resentments. She drew a steadying breath, sensing that tonight's revelations might either shatter the rift or deepen it beyond repair. As Sylvia looked up, awaiting Marianne's response, the wind outside rattled the window panes. Marianne placed a hand on the envelope, determination sparking within her. She would uncover where this letter came from and reveal the real story, no matter how painful. The first step toward healing lay in facing this deception head-on. Marianne Holt slipped into her study after the tense dinner, the envelope still clutched in her hand. The soft glow of the desk lamp cast long shadows across her late mother's antique desk, where she often reviewed letters and invitations. Tonight, the silence felt heavy with unspoken accusations. She unfolded the letter again. The elegant handwriting in the main body looked familiar, an old friend's signature, but the postscript felt alien, its tone accusatory and cruel. Who would forge Marianne's hand and why? She closed her eyes, recalling childhood afternoons with her grandmother, poring over family letters and learning the value of honesty. Now, a falsified note threatened to undo years of effort. Marianne resolved to trace its origin. She opened her laptop, heart pounding, and searched her email archives for any correspondence with the supposed friend. No record existed of any letter sent to Sylvia. She then checked her stationery. She had no exquisite personalized stationery matching what Sylvia held. The handwriting, though believable at first glance, bore subtle differences, slightly heavier loops in the Y's and a firmer stroke in the T's. It was almost her handwriting, but not quite. Someone had studied her hand, perhaps from an old note or card. Meanwhile, Sylvia retired to her guest room, the envelope folded on her bedside table. In the quiet, she replayed Marianne's composed response, the way Marianne had offered understanding and yet concealed inner resolve. Sylvia felt a pang. She had long nurtured doubts about Marianne's commitment to family. But did she truly believe in this letter's authenticity? Or had something in her own heart, jealousy, fear of being sidelined by Marianne's choices, made her susceptible to believing a deception? Despite the chill in her relationship, part of her regretted the harshness she'd displayed. But confessing now would expose her own vulnerability. Back in the study, Marianne's phone buzzed a message from Claire, Ethan's sister. Claire had texted, "Mom looks upset. Need to talk?" Marianne hesitated, then replied, "Yes. Can you come by tomorrow morning?" Claire's reply was immediate, "I'll be there. Love you." Marianne felt relief. She needed an ally who understood both sides. The next day, Claire arrived with gentle footsteps. They sat in the sunlit kitchen marigold light, filtering through curtains, where Marianne explained the letter. Claire's brow furrowed as she examined a photograph Marianne showed of the handwriting. "This isn't Mom's usual script," Claire murmured. "I've seen her write. This feels different." Marianne exhaled. Claire, who had often mediated small family tiffs, now offered hope. They agreed to approach Sylvia with caution. Marianne would request proof of the letter's origin, and Claire would gently probe her mother to reveal why she believed it. That evening, Marianne texted Ethan, "I need your support tomorrow morning before talking with your mother." His reply, I understand. Let's face this together. Marianne appreciated his solidarity, though she sensed his own conflict torn between loyalty to his mother and trust in his wife. The next morning, Marianne and Ethan visited Sylvia's home under the pretense of brunch. The air was cool, faint scent of gardenias drifting in from Sylvia's front yard. Sylvia greeted them with measured politeness, but her eyes betrayed unease. Marianne offered coffee and they settled on the veranda. Ethan gently asked, Mother, can we talk about that letter you showed last night? Sylvia's expression tightened. She placed the envelope on the small table between them. Marianne leaned forward, voice steady. Sylvia, I never wrote that postscript. I'd like to understand how you received it. Sylvia's fingers trembled as she smoothed the paper. A friend sent it. She thought you might need to remember your obligations. Marianne exchanged a glance with Ethan. This friend was unknown to Marianne. I'd like to speak with her, Marianne said calmly. Could you share her contact information? Sylvia hesitated, glancing at Ethan. I don't have direct contact details. She passed your address along to me. The inconsistency deepened Marianne's suspicion. Claire, who had discreetly joined them under the guise of dropping by with homemade pastries, stepped forward. Mother, was this letter mailed or handed to you in person? Sylvia's eyes flickered. She admitted it had been slipped under her door a week earlier. I thought it was genuine, she murmured. Claire pressed gently. Do you recall anyone you spoke with about Marianne afterward? Sylvia's gaze dropped. I received a phone call that day. The voice claimed to be our friend, but I didn't ask many questions. Marianne's pulse quickened. Someone impersonated the friend's voice in a phone call, then delivered a forged letter. Who stood to gain? Marianne considered possible motives, someone wishing to widen the rift between her and Sylvia, perhaps jealous of Marianne's closeness with Ethan, or intent on destabilizing the family. Determined to uncover the truth, Marianne enlisted Claire to help. They would verify the friend's contact details independently. Meanwhile, Ethan accessed his mother's call records with her reluctant permission to identify the number that had called. The number traced to an unregistered mobile, making identification tricky. But Claire remembered that around the same time, a neighbor had mentioned overhearing late-night conversations at Sylvia's home with someone whose voice sounded vaguely familiar. The neighbor, Mrs. Patel, agreed to recall details she'd heard Sylvia on the phone, but only fragments. I need to know the truth. Yes, I understand. The voice on the other end was disguised, carefully modulated. Someone had gone to lengths to manipulate Sylvia's trust. As Marianne and Claire pieced together these clues, an unsettling thought emerged. Might someone in their immediate circle be behind it? Could it be a jealous friend from community circles or someone close to Claire who misinterpreted Marianne's devotion? Or a more distant relative seeking to undermine Sylvia? The ambiguity deepened the emotional stakes. Marianne felt betrayal, not just from Sylvia's mistrust, but from whoever engineered this deception. That evening, Marianne sat alone, knitting a familiar cable pattern, a habit that soothed her nerves. Each loop felt like a promise to persist. Ethan joined her quietly. Thank you for handling this with such grace, he said softly. Marianne looked up, weary yet resolute. I need to restore trust in our family, but first we must expose the source of this lie. Ethan nodded, wrapping an arm around her. Their unity offered Marianne comfort amid uncertainty. As moonlight filtered through the window, Marianne drafted a plan. They would reach out to the purported friend, directly find her through mutual acquaintances, and confirm she never sent such a letter. They would scrutinize phone records further, maybe engage a professional to trace the call, and they would prepare to confront the culprit when found, revealing the truth to Sylvia with compassion, yet firmness. But as Marianne drifted to sleep, a final question lingered. What if the deception ran deeper than a single letter? What if other lies had been sown over time, skewing Sylvia's perceptions? She realized that healing, Their fractured relationship might require unraveling a web of half-truths and suppressed fears on both sides. Tomorrow's search would unearth not only evidence, but hidden emotions, Sylvia's insecurities, and Mary Ann's regrets. The path ahead promised both pain and the possibility of genuine reconciliation. In the days following the veranda conversation, Mary Ann Holt and Claire moved with quiet determination. They began by verifying the identity of the old friend whose letter had sown discord. Through a mutual acquaintance in their hometown's community network, they learned that the friend, Lydia Grant, had in fact sent a brief note to Sylvia months before, praising Mary Ann's early charity efforts, but Lydia insisted she had never appended any postscript or made disparaging remarks. When Mary Ann spoke with Lydia over a video call, the older woman's eyes filled with sorrow at the suggestion. "I cared for Mary Ann like a sister," Lydia said, voice trembling. "I would never question her loyalty to family. Someone must have forged my handwriting and voice." Mary Ann thanked Lydia, relief mingling with fresh concern the deception was real, and someone had specifically targeted both Lydia and Sylvia to provoke mistrust. Meanwhile, Ethan assisted by examining phone records further. Though the call to Sylvia had come from an unregistered number, the call logs revealed a suspicious pattern of late-night calls on several occasions over the previous months. Sylvia, pressed by Mary Ann and Claire, reluctantly admitted she had received brief phone calls late at night, moments when Ethan or Mary Ann were unavailable, and on each occasion the caller cloaked their voice, claiming some urgent family matter. Sylvia, unsettled and perhaps longing for connection or guidance, had been susceptible to believing the caller's insinuations about Mary Ann's priorities. Uncovering this pattern heightened Mary Ann's resolve. The deceit had been orchestrated over time, not a single act. Claire suggested they look for emotional or financial motives among those close to Sylvia. They discreetly inquired whether Sylvia had confided in anyone about her worries besides Lydia. A neighbor recalled Sylvia mentioning anxiety about Mary Ann moving away and seeming distant, but no one else knew details. Yet Claire noted a subtle tension between Sylvia and her longtime friend Patricia Mills, a member of the same book club. Patricia had once voiced mild envy of Mary Ann's ease with people and her charitable reputation. Claire arranged a casual meeting under the guise of a neighborhood gathering. Over tea, she steered conversation toward family trust and the perils of rumor. Patricia's expressions flickered a momentary tight smile, then a shift of gaze. Claire gently probed, "Have you ever felt unsettled by something you heard about Mary Ann?" Patricia's response was careful but revealing. "Sometimes I hear things, but I prefer not to dwell on gossip." Claire noted her evasiveness. As Mary Ann knitted in her study one afternoon, a cable pattern that had always calmed. Hershey received a discreet message from Claire Meet Me at the community garden bench at 4 p.m. When they convened beneath the early autumn sun, Claire shared her observations. "Patricia's words don't match her expression. I think she may have been the one feeding rumors or even involved in forging the letter." Mary Ann's heart tightened. If someone within Sylvia's circle harbored resentment, the web of deception could be more personal than she'd feared. That evening, Mary Ann confronted Sylvia with the new insight carefully, with compassion. They sat together in Sylvia's cozy living room, the scent of chamomile tea lingering. Mary Ann spoke gently, "Mother, Claire and I spoke with Lydia, and we discovered the calls and letter were fabricated. We also learned there were late-night calls that unsettled you. Someone manipulated you. I suspect someone close to you used those suspicions to turn you against me." Sylvia's eyes welled as she realized how deeply she'd been misled. "I feel so foolish," she whispered. "I allowed doubt to take root." Mary Ann reached out, placing a hand over Sylvia's. "It's not foolish to seek the truth. Together, we'll uncover who did this." Sylvia nodded, relief and shame mingling. But the revelation carried new complexity. If Patricia or someone else in Sylvia's circle had engineered this, Mary Ann had to decide how to expose the culprit without causing further family rifts. Moreover, Mary Ann recognized that Sylvia's own insecurities, fear of being replaced in Ethan's affections, regret over Mary Ann's move away, had made her vulnerable to manipulation. Mary Ann resolved to help Sylvia heal those insecurities even as they sought justice. Over the next days, the pair quietly gathered evidence. Claire obtained access to Patricia's social media interactions and discovered that Patricia had privately messaged others with hints about Mary Ann's supposed negligence, comments that seemed designed to reinforce doubt. Meanwhile, Mary Ann reviewed Sylvia's late-night call logs, several calls from numbers now traced to a disposable phone tied to Patricia's acquaintances. Confronted with these clues, Sylvia confronted Patricia in a private meeting at the garden. Patricia's initial defensiveness dissolved into tears when faced with Sylvia's hurt. "I was jealous," she confessed, voice breaking. "I felt Mary Ann had everything: respect, purpose, affection from Ethan, and I resented how distant she became when she moved away. I thought I was protecting our family by warning you, but I never meant to hurt her so deeply." The admission was painful, yet pivotal. The source of the deception stood revealed. Mary Ann and Sylvia arranged a final meeting, this time with Patricia present but under controlled circumstances. In Sylvia's living room, the three women faced one another. Mary Ann spoke first, voice calm. "Patricia, I appreciate your honesty, but your actions caused pain and nearly destroyed my relationship with Sylvia and Ethan. Trust must be rebuilt." Patricia bowed her head, remorse evident. "I'm sorry. I let envy warp my judgment. I never considered how my rumors would fracture your family." Sylvia added, voice gentle but firm, "I forgive you, but I also forgive myself for believing gossip without seeking truth." "Mary Ann, I'm truly sorry for doubting you." Mary Ann felt tears sting her eyes. The process of confrontation and confession, though wrenching, was a step toward healing. Yet even as they reached this point, Mary Ann sensed further layers to address. She needed to rebuild trust with Sylvia by demonstrating transparency and consistent care despite physical distance. Sylvia, in turn, needed reassurance and involvement in Mary Ann's life beyond occasional visits. The conversation ended with tentative plans, regular video calls between Sylvia and Mary Ann, visits timed around mutual projects, and clear boundaries in sharing concerns. No more whispered rumors unverified. That night, Mary Ann returned home feeling both relief and exhaustion. She sat by her knitting basket, the cable pattern slowing her thoughts. The conflict with Sylvia and Patricia had surfaced deep-rooted insecurities and unspoken resentments, but it had also opened a path for honest communication. Emma, visiting for a weekend break, greeted her with a warm hug. Mary Ann shared the day's developments. Emma's admiration and pride shone through. Tom arrived from the garage and placed a supportive hand on Mary Ann's shoulder. Together, they acknowledged the hard work still ahead, nurturing the healed bond with Sylvia, ensuring Patricia's remorse led to positive change, and safeguarding their family against future misunderstandings. As Mary Ann prepared for bed, she reflected on the journey, the forged letter, the late-night calls, the uncovering of jealousy and vulnerability. The darkness of deception had tested her resilience, but the process of investigation and compassionate confrontation had strengthened her relationships. Tomorrow, she would call Sylvia for another video chat, this time sharing a project they could collaborate on despite distance, perhaps a joint community initiative, or a shared recipe blog that bridged their lives. In that plan lay the promise of renewed connection. Yet a final question lingered in her mind. Had all the manipulation truly come to light? Or might there be other undercurrents, unspoken feelings in the wider family, or external pressures that remained hidden? Mary Ann set her knitting aside and closed her eyes, resolved to remain vigilant and open-hearted. The path to lasting reconciliation required continued effort, empathy, and the willingness to face new challenges together. With that resolve, she drifted into sleep, ready for whatever Part 4 would reveal. A week after confronting Patricia and initiating tentative reconciliation with Sylvia, Mary Ann Holt awoke to a soft autumn light filtering through her bedroom curtains. The crisp scent of fallen leaves drifted in when she cracked the window. Though lingering fatigue tugged at her limbs, a quiet determination filled her heart. She needed to follow through on the plans. She had promised Sylvia projects that would knit their lives closer, despite the miles between them. That morning, over coffee in the kitchen, Mary Ann reviewed notes on a community initiative. She and Sylvia had discussed a family recipe exchange, an online series where both would share cherished family dishes, pairing meals with charitable contributions to local food banks. The idea felt symbolic, nourishing not only their own bond, but also the wider community. Mary Ann smiled at the memory of Sylvia's eyes brightening when they first spoke of collaborating. Now the challenge was turning concept into reality. She called Emma to enlist her marketing skills. Emma joined via video chat, the screen showing her dorm room backdrop scattered with textbooks and a skein of wool on the desk, an echo of the knitting lessons that had healed their family before. "Mom, the platform is ready," Emma said, voice upbeat. "We can create a simple website landing page with video embeds, recipe downloads, and donation links. I'll handle the tech. You just need to record the first video." Mary Ann nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. Appearing on camera alongside Sylvia would require vulnerability, but it also offered a chance to demonstrate genuine warmth and transparency. Meanwhile, Ethan's schedule as a corporate lawyer had grown busier, but he carved out Sunday afternoons to support Mary Ann's project. Over lunch that day, he balanced a bowl of soup and listened as his mother and wife discussed logistics. "I can draft disclaimers for liability and help manage any legal concerns," he offered. Mary Ann appreciated his steady presence, his ability to bridge her world with Sylvia's, and realized how crucial his support was in cementing the renewed trust. That evening, Mary Ann set up her laptop in the living room, testing lighting and audio. She arranged a small table with a neatly folded tablecloth, a vase of fresh chrysanthemums, and the family heirloom china plates she planned to feature. A soft hum from the kitchen's simmering pot of broth mingled with the distant rustle of pages from a cookbook resting open, sensory details, grounding her in the moment. She rehearsed speaking points, sharing memories of childhood Sunday dinners, acknowledging past misunderstandings, and expressing gratitude for the chance to collaborate. She felt her pulse quicken as she envisioned Sylvia on the other end of the call. The next afternoon, Mary Ann dialed Sylvia for their first joint recording session. On screen, Sylvia appeared in her well-lit kitchen, a gentle smile on her face, but eyes reflecting caution and hope. Behind Sylvia, a windowsill held small potted herbs, the green leaves bright against the muted autumn sky outside. Mary Ann greeted her warmly. "Hello, Mother. It's good to see you." Sylvia's voice, soft yet steady, responded, "Hello, Mary Ann. I'm glad we're doing this." They began by exchanging memories. Mary Ann described the aroma of Sylvia's apple pie baking when she was a newlywed, while Sylvia recalled Mary Ann's patience teaching Claire to fold napkins elegantly for holiday dinners. As they spoke, the screen's split view highlighted their shared gestures, hands lightly cupping mugs, gentle nods that signaled empathy. When it was Mary Ann's turn to demonstrate a recipe, she guided viewers through preparing a simple but comforting chicken and vegetable stew, narrating how the dish had soothed family anxieties during difficult times. Sylvia chimed in with notes on seasoning, a pinch of sage here, a dash of nutmeg there, her voice warm with familiarity. Midway through filming, a sudden knock sounded at Mary Ann's front door. Tom appeared in the doorway, holding a basket of fresh produce from the farmer's market. "Unexpected delivery," he said with a wry smile. Emma, behind the camera, laughed softly. "Perfect timing, farm fresh ingredients for tomorrow's segment." Mary Ann thanked him, placing the basket on the counter. The clink of jars and neatly stacked vegetables added authenticity to their shared kitchen. The interruption felt like a tangible reminder that family support was woven into daily life. After wrapping the recording, Marianne and Sylvia reviewed the footage together, noting areas to refine, adjusting camera angles, speaking more candidly about past mistakes, and weaving in a brief apology from Sylvia for having believed unverified rumors. Sylvia, though initially hesitant, agreed that acknowledging her own vulnerability would resonate with viewers and demonstrate sincerity. Marianne felt a swell of compassion and respect. Seeing Sylvia admit her error on camera deepened her empathy for the insecurities that had made her susceptible to Patricia's deceit. Once the video was finalized and published on the Family Recipe Exchange landing page, Emma shared it across social media, tagging local community groups and encouraging donations to food banks tied to each recipe download. Comments began trickling in. Viewers praised the warmth of their interaction, the candid acknowledgement of past misunderstandings, and the inviting nature of the recipes. One comment read, "Watching you two cook together feels like being welcomed into a family. Thank you for sharing." Marianne read these words with a sense of fulfillment. Their collaborative effort was already sowing positive ripples. However, as engagement grew, a new challenge surfaced: mixed reactions from extended family members. Some relatives messaged privately, commending the initiative, while others remained silent or sent ambiguous remarks about airing family issues publicly. Marianne recognized that opening wounds could invite discomfort for others accustomed to privacy. She discussed this with Ethan. "Some may feel exposed by what Sylvia and I shared. How should we address them?" Ethan suggested reaching out individually to close relatives, explaining their intent that healing required honesty and that their aim was unity, not blame. Marianne agreed and spent the next days making phone calls. Some conversations were heartfelt and smooth. Others were awkward, with relatives hesitant to revisit tensions. Each call reminded her that reconciliation often meant navigating discomfort alongside healing. Meanwhile, the community response led to an invitation. The local community center asked Marianne and Sylvia to host an in-person cooking and conversation event for families facing estrangement or misunderstandings. The idea both thrilled and unnerved Marianne. Standing before a group to share their story live would be a deeper level of vulnerability. She confided in Sylvia, "What if I falter? What if emotions run too high?" Sylvia reached across Marianne's hand via video call. "We'll face it together. Our story can help others feel less alone." Encouraged, they agreed. On the day of the event, Marianne arrived at the community center's kitchen, the air rich with the scent of simmering broth and fresh herbs. Sylvia, traveling from her home, arrived clutching the same vintage apron Marianne had once borrowed years ago. As they greeted attendees, strangers united by shared struggles, the warmth of their genuine rapport eased initial awkwardness. They cooked side by side, pausing to share anecdotes of miscommunication and forgiveness. At one point, a participant in tears described a similar conflict with her own mother-in-law. Marianne offered a gentle reassurance. Trust can be rebuilt, but it takes honesty, patience, and willingness to listen without judgment. The room's atmosphere shifted from apprehension to camaraderie as others nodded and murmured agreement. Yet during the Q&A, a man in the back raised a challenging question. What if the other party refuses to acknowledge their mistakes? How can one move forward if only one side is willing to reconcile? The question hung in the air, more daunting than the earlier confessions. Marianne paused, recalling her own journey, Sylvia's initial denial, her gradual acceptance of evidence, and eventual apology. She spoke thoughtfully. Sometimes reconciliation begins with a single act of openness, sharing your truth calmly and inviting dialogue. If the other side resists, you may need to set boundaries to protect your well-being while remaining open to future conversations. Healing is rarely linear, Sylvia added, and in my case, admitting my insecurity was scary, but it allowed me to see Marianne's perspective. It took time, but choosing empathy over defensiveness made the difference. The audience responded with appreciative applause, yet Marianne sensed that this question reflected deeper uncertainties. Not every family would follow the same path, and some wounds might remain partially closed. After the event, as they packed up utensils and wiped down counters, Marianne and Sylvia shared a quiet moment by the window overlooking the community garden. The sky glowed with late afternoon light, leaves rustling in a gentle breeze. Sylvia placed a hand on Marianne's arm. "Thank you for inviting me into this. I feel closer to you than I have in years." Marianne smiled, emotion softening her eyes. "And thank you for trusting me enough to share your vulnerability. Our bond feels stronger." Yet Marianne also felt the weight of the difficult questions posed: how to support families where only one party sought reconciliation. She realized their journey would not be a one-time victory, but an ongoing practice of empathy and communication. That evening, back at home, Marianne and Ethan reviewed the day's feedback messages of gratitude from attendees, along with a few noting lingering skepticism about airing private matters publicly. They discussed refining future events, perhaps offering private counseling sessions or moderated support groups. Emma joined, suggesting they create short modules video guides on communication skills, active listening exercises, and managing boundaries which could extend their impact without requiring constant in-person presence. Marianne felt invigorated. Blending practical resources with personal storytelling could help more families navigate conflict. Yet beneath this optimism lay a gentle tension. Marianne had opened doors to healing, but also recognized that some relationships in her extended family might never fully repair. She wondered how to balance her desire to help others with protecting her own emotional energy and privacy. As she prepared for bed, Marianne reflected on the journey so far, from the initial forged letters betrayal, through uncovering motives, to rebuilding trust with Sylvia and offering guidance to others. Each step had taught her patience, courage, and the power of vulnerability. Before sleep claimed her, Marianne texted Sylvia to plan their next video segment, this time featuring a joint discussion on setting healthy boundaries in family relationships. As the screen dimmed and the house fell silent, Marianne held her knitting needles for a moment, looping yarn as she processed the day's lessons. Reconciliation was an ongoing tapestry, requiring care and intention. With that thought, she laid down her knitting and allowed herself to rest, ready to face the complexities that Part 5 would bring. Morning sunlight filtered through the kitchen curtains as Marianne Holt prepared tea for herself and Emma. The previous day's cooking and conversation event had warmed many hearts, yet lingering uncertainty about extending their efforts weighed on her. Emma arrived with a folder of draft materials for their video modules on communication and boundaries. Marianne smiled appreciatively. Seeing her daughter's enthusiasm reminded her how far they had come. Across town, Sylvia was meeting with community center coordinators to plan future workshops. Their collaboration had taken root, but new questions hovered in Marianne's mind. How to sustain this work without overextending themselves, and how to handle relatives who still harbored doubt. Late that morning, Marianne received a phone call from Claire. Ethan's sister sounded anxious. "Marianne, there's something I need to tell you," Claire began hesitantly. Mother confided that Patricia recently contacted her again, expressing remorse but also deep insecurity about where she fit in the family. Patricia wants to help, but Mother worries that involving her more might reopen old wounds. Marianne understood the dilemma. Excluding Patricia risked alienating Sylvia's longtime friend, but including her too soon might stir jealousy or mistrust anew. She agreed to meet Claire and Sylvia later to discuss boundaries and roles. That afternoon, Marianne video called Sylvia. On screen, Sylvia appeared poised, but with a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Marianne gently broached the topic. Sylvia, I spoke with Claire about Patricia's wish to contribute. I wonder how we can guide her involvement in a way that supports healing rather than reopening pain. Sylvia paused, then confessed, I appreciate Patricia's apology, but I'm wary. I do not want to relive that betrayal. Yet, I also recall Patricia's earlier generosity in our community projects. It pains me to push her away entirely. Marianne nodded. Empathy for Sylvia's conflicted feelings would be crucial. They agreed to propose a structured role for Patricia, perhaps assisting in logistical tasks behind the scenes rather than front and center public events, allowing her to rebuild trust gradually. That evening, Sylvia and Marianne met in person at a quiet cafe between their homes. The air smelled faintly of brewed coffee and fallen leaves. Sylvia explained how her heart still fluttered with both regret and lingering hurt whenever Patricia was mentioned. Marianne listened closely, acknowledging those emotions, then suggested, what if we invite Patricia to manage a small part of our recipe exchange platform, perhaps sourcing ingredient donations for food bank events so she contributes in a practical way under our supervision? This could show her sincerity while limiting potential missteps. Sylvia considered this with visible relief. That seems wise. It also keeps accountability clear. Marianne felt a surge of hope by defining boundaries compassionately. They could integrate Patricia's goodwill without risking old wounds. Meanwhile, Emma finalized the first module script's short videos on active listening exercises and setting respectful limits when conflicts arise. She recorded Marianne demonstrating I statements and role-playing scenarios with a volunteer from the knitting workshop. The footage captured Marianne's calm demeanor and genuine warmth. After editing, Emma uploaded the modules to their platform, adding a disclaimer about seeking professional help for severe estrangement. As comments appeared, thankful messages from viewers facing fractured relationships. Marianne felt confidence that their journey could offer guidance beyond their own family. A week later, Marianne and Sylvia co-hosted a private planning session with Patricia present, alongside Claire as mediator. In Sylvia's sunlit living room, the three women sat around a low table. Patricia arrived with a small potted plant as a peace offering. Marianne opened gently. Patricia, thank you for being here. We value your willingness to help. Today, we'd like to explore specific tasks you can take on. Patricia's eyes reflected remorse and hope. Sylvia described the idea Patricia could coordinate donation pickups for their next food bank, cooking event, handling communication with volunteers and suppliers. Marianne added, this behind-the-scenes role lets you contribute meaningfully while we maintain oversight. If any issues arise, we can address them together. Patricia nodded, voice soft. I understand, and I'm grateful for the chance. I want to rebuild trust carefully. Claire observed their interaction and later remarked to Marianne that everyone seemed relieved. Yet, as they planned, Marianne sensed an undercurrent. Patricia's eagerness was tinged with anxiety. She glanced at Sylvia for approval. Marianne knew sustaining this new dynamic would require constant attention to emotions. She resolved to check in regularly, affirming both Sylvia's boundaries and Patricia's genuine efforts. That weekend, Emma organized a small live Q&A on their platform, inviting viewers to ask about handling in-law conflicts. The session drew a moderate audience. People shared varied experiences, and Marianne responded with examples from her own journey, while Emma moderated chat messages and offered resources. Toward the end, a participant's question stood out. What if family rifts are tied to deeper generational expectations, not just one event? Marianne paused, reflecting on the cracks that had formed in her marriage as she and Ethan moved away to care for her father. She addressed it candidly. Sometimes conflicts stem from long-held roles and unspoken assumptions. Healing often means acknowledging those legacies and choosing new narratives. It might be uncomfortable, but by creating shared projects like our recipe exchange, we foster new shared memories that can overwrite old patterns. After the session, Feedback poured in, praising their vulnerability. Emma shared the highlights with Marianne, who felt both pride and the weight of responsibility. They were guiding many viewers through delicate terrains. That evening, as Sarah tidied the kitchen wiping counters fragranced by simmered stew, Marianne reflected on the journey from confronting a forged letter to building collaborative projects, managing Patricia's reintegration, and offering guidance to strangers. Each phase demanded empathy, firmness, and resilience. But challenges remain. That night, Marianne received a text from Claire Sylvia called, "She's worried about Patricia's reaction to our next event." Patricia asked if she could co-host a small workshop on family recipes. Sylvia fears that might be too soon. Should we intervene? Marianne recognized the delicate balance. Would it be wise to allow Patricia any further public role? She drafted a response suggest a phased approach. Patricia first co-host a private planning meeting rather than a public session to gauge readiness. But as she hit send, a fresh message arrived from Sylvia. "I want to talk in person tomorrow." Marianne's chest tightened with anticipation. Despite progress, the next conversation could unearth new insecurities or test their hard-won trust. As she prepared for bed, Marianne picked up her knitting needles, allowing each loop to calm her racing thoughts. The pattern she worked on evoked intertwined cables symbolic of relationships, two strands weaving together but needing care to prevent tight knots. She reflected that reconciliation was not a destination but an ongoing practice, requiring vigilance and compassion. With the next meeting looming, she felt both apprehension and resolve they would navigate the complexities together, one careful stitch of understanding at a time. A chill settled into the early morning air as Marianne Holt rose before dawn, the weight of yesterday's conversation with Sylvia and Claire still lingering in her mind. They had agreed that Patricia would begin contributing behind the scenes, coordinating ingredient donations, but Patricia's recent request to co-host a public workshop on family recipes had unsettled Sylvia again. Marianne sensed that the path toward full reconciliation was fraught, showing trust too soon risked reopening old wounds, but excluding Patricia entirely could undermine her genuine remorse. Today, Marianne would seek clarity and reinforce boundaries before moving forward. By mid-morning, Marianne arrived at Sylvia's home with a tray of freshly baked scones. The kitchen's warm light revealed fragrant steam curling from the pastries. Sylvia greeted her with a tentative smile, her expression reflecting both gratitude and anxiety. They settled at the small kitchen table, where a vase of autumn chrysanthemums brightened the corner. After exchanging pleasantries, Marianne gently broached the matter. "Mother, I understand Patricia wants to co-host a workshop. I know she means well, but I worry it may be premature." "How do you feel?" Sylvia paused, stirring her tea slowly. "I'm torn," she admitted. "Part of me wants to believe in her sincerity. Another part fears my own vulnerability if she stands beside me publicly again." Marianne nodded, acknowledging the complexity. "Perhaps we can design a phased approach. Patricia could observe the next public event as a silent guest, or assist behind the scenes rather than speaking in front of attendees. This would allow her to demonstrate reliability without risking renewed tension in front of others." Sylvia's shoulders relaxed slightly. "That feels safer. If she proves herself quietly, I may feel ready for a more visible role later." Marianne smiled, relieved they had a shared plan. Later that week, preparations for the next family recipe exchange event were underway. A live-streamed cooking demonstration paired with a panel discussion on navigating in-law misunderstandings. Emma handled the technical setup in Marianne's home studio, arranging camera angles that captured both kitchen worktops and comfortable seating for panelists. Tom organized ingredient deliveries and checked the schedules of volunteer participants. Sylvia, cautiously optimistic, would join Marianne on camera to share reflections on healing. Patricia would attend off-camera, managing chat moderation and ensuring donation links functioned properly, her first defined role. On the day of the event, Marianne felt a flutter of nerves. The living room turned studio glowed with soft light. The countertop held the ingredients for a simple but flavorful autumn stew, and a laptop displayed a slide. Reading Healing Families Through Food. A conversation with Marianne and Sylvia Holt. Emma signaled readiness, and Marianne took a steadying breath. When the live stream began, viewers greeted them with encouraging comments. "Excited for this! I watched your last session, so inspiring." Marianne smiled, then invited Sylvia to join. Sylvia appeared on screen, her expression warm but reserved, the result of cautious optimism and lingering vulnerability. They began by cooking side by side, Marianne stirring root vegetables, Sylvia adding herbs, and recounting childhood memories of family gatherings. Their interaction felt natural and heartfelt. After preparing the stew, they transitioned to the panel discussion. Marianne framed the topic today. We explore how to rebuild trust after misunderstandings, especially between mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law. We'll share our journey and practical steps that helped us. Viewers' comments poured in. "This is exactly what I need. Thank you for your honesty." The atmosphere seemed supportive. Behind the scenes, Patricia monitored the chat, flagging questions and ensuring respectful dialogue. Initially, she fulfilled her role seamlessly, but midway through, a question appeared that cut sharply. How do you handle a mother-in-law who refuses to listen, even after apologies? Should the daughter-in-law just walk away? Marianne's heart tightened. This touchpoint could trigger old insecurities. She paused, gathering her thoughts. On camera, she responded calmly. It depends on the individuals involved. Sometimes genuine reconciliation requires time and consistent actions. If one side resists, setting healthy boundaries is important. Walking away entirely may not be necessary instead. One could limit contact to protect emotional well-being while leaving the door open for future dialogue. Sylvia added, and acknowledging one's own vulnerabilities can encourage the other to reflect. I had to admit my insecurity before I could truly listen to Marianne. But each family's dynamics differ. The conversation remained respectful, and the chat shifted toward gratitude for their nuanced perspective. After the live stream concluded with warm farewells, Marianne exhaled, relief mingling with fatigue. Emma reviewed engagement metrics, high viewership, positive feedback, and new subscribers. Tom offered Marianne a mug of herbal tea. Sylvia, seated across, offered a small smile. "Thank you for guiding me today," she said quietly. Marianne reached across the table. "Thank you for your courage and sharing." They both felt the bond strengthened by this collaborative effort. Yet, as they packed away equipment, a private message notification lit up. Marianne's laptop Patricia had emailed, expressing eagerness to take on a more visible role, believing that public collaboration would cement her redemption. She wrote, "I feel ready to co-host next time. I know now how important transparency is. I want to show everyone I've changed." Marianne read the message with a tight chest. While Patricia's desire to demonstrate growth was sincere, moving too quickly risked unsettling Sylvia and possibly inviting new scrutiny from viewers who might misinterpret early missteps. That evening, Marianne and Sylvia discussed Patricia's email. Sylvia admitted feeling torn. "I want to encourage her progress, but I fear exposing her before she's fully earned visible trust." Marianne agreed. "We can reaffirm her behind-the-scenes role for now and set milestones after a few successful events in this capacity. We can evaluate readiness for co-hosting. I will communicate this kindly but firmly." Sylvia nodded, grateful for Marianne's guidance in balancing compassion with caution. In the days that followed, the family focused on consolidating the family recipe exchange platform. Emma drafted a series of short articles on emotional boundaries. Marianne and Sylvia recorded additional recipe videos emphasizing collaboration and empathy, and Tom coordinated outreach to community partners for future workshops. Patricia continued moderating chats, coordinating donations, and assisting with Logistics gradually rebuilding trust through reliable service rather than public visibility. However, as Patricia's confidence grew behind the scenes, a subtle shift emerged. She began contributing suggestions, sometimes over-enthusiastically, about content direction, like proposing new topics beyond family reconciliation, such as health advice or lifestyle trends. While her intentions were to help expand the platform, Marianne recognized that unchecked input could dilute their core message and risk mission drift. One afternoon, Marianne invited Patricia to a virtual meeting. I appreciate your ideas and enthusiasm. Let's align on our primary focus, family healing, through shared traditions and schedule brainstorming sessions after we've fully solidified our current modules. That way, we maintain clarity and quality. Patricia responded with understanding, but also relief at having clear guidance. Marianne felt the delicate balance of including Patricia's goodwill while safeguarding the platform's integrity. Late that week, Marianne received a message from a viewer who had tried reconnecting with her own mother-in-law after watching Marianne and Sylvia's sessions. The viewer shared that her efforts had initially faltered, old resentments resurfaced, but recalling Marianne's advice about pacing reconciliation and setting boundaries helped her navigate the turmoil. Marianne felt profound validation their journey, with its careful navigation of Patricia's reintegration, and Sylvia's healing was now guiding others facing similar challenges. As autumn deepened, Marianne paused one evening to reflect. Crafting recipes and conversations had become more than a project. It was a living testament to how honesty, empathy, and structured boundaries could transform relationships. The involvement of Patricia, once the source of deceit, now served as a nuanced example. True reconciliation often unfolds in stages, requiring patience, clear roles, and shared purpose. Looking ahead, Marianne knew further challenges awaited. Extended family members who remained skeptical might react unpredictably to each step. Patricia's growth trajectory could vary. Sylvia's own vulnerabilities might resurface under stress. But having navigated the forged letters betrayal and the delicate reintegration of Patricia, Marianne felt equipped with resilience and insight. As she prepared for bed, her knitting needles lay on the side table, the half-finished cable pattern, reflecting intertwined strands, symbolic of family ties that, though twisted and stretched, could be carefully rewoven into something stronger. Marianne drifted to sleep with a calm resolve. The path of healing was ongoing, but each deliberate stitch of empathy, boundary setting, and collaboration would maintain the tapestry of trust they had begun rebuilding. Tomorrow, she would plan the next workshop, this time perhaps exploring sibling-in-law dynamics, and continue guiding others through the complexities of family reconciliation, one thoughtful conversation and recipe at a time. Autumn deepened into early winter, and the Family Recipe Exchange platform hummed with activity new recipe videos, articles on communication, and behind-the-scenes coordination by Patricia. Marianne Holt sat at her desk one morning, reviewing feedback from participants. Many praised the platform's empathetic approach, yet a few comments hinted at lingering skepticism. Some extended relatives wondered if airing private conflicts might stir more discord. Marianne sighed, aware that every step forward risked rekindling old tensions. She resolved to address these concerns proactively, crafting content that emphasized discretion and respect for differing comfort levels when sharing personal stories. That afternoon, Marianne and Emma convened to plan a series on reconciliation in large families, focusing on sibling-in-law dynamics. Emma pointed out that Claire's perspective as Ethan's sister could enrich the discussion. Marianne agreed involving Claire would model healthy inclusion of extended family voices. She messaged Claire, "Would you join a panel discussion about navigating conflicts between sibling spouses? Your insights could help others." Claire replied with warmth and eagerness, though Marianne sensed some unease. She knew Claire still bore subtle loyalties to both Marianne and Sylvia, and stepping into a public role might reignite delicate balances. They scheduled a video session for the following week. Leading up to it, Marianne coordinated with Sylvia, ensuring the new topic aligned with their overarching mission: healing family rifts gently. Sylvia approved, but cautioned some relatives may feel exposed if the discussion touches on their dynamics. Marianne acknowledged this, planning to present the panel as a general conversation, rather than case studies of real individuals, emphasizing anonymity and hypothetical scenarios. Meanwhile, Patricia offered to help gather questions from viewers. As she compiled inquiries, Marianne noticed a particular question that felt pointed. How do you handle a sister-in-law who undermines your parenting choices, but your spouse refuses to intervene? The question's tone suggested someone wrestling with resentment. Marianne filed it for the panel discussion, but felt a twinge. Was this question from a genuine viewer, or perhaps someone within their circle testing boundaries? She noted it discreetly, intending to discuss general strategies without probing specifics. On the day of the panel, Marianne set up the home studio warm, lighting a background featuring both her and Sylvia's china plates and cookbooks, and a small vase of late-season chrysanthemums. Emma tested audio levels, and Tom stocked the kitchen counter with ingredients, symbolizing unity: apples to represent coming together, spices from diverse traditions to reflect blending perspectives. Claire joined via video call, her image framed by her own kitchen backdrop. Patricia monitored the chat off camera, ready to curate questions and maintain a respectful tone. As the live stream began, Marianne introduced the topic. Welcome to our panel on navigating sibling-in-law conflicts. Today, Claire, Sylvia, and I will share insights on maintaining harmony when differing values and expectations arise. Viewers responded immediately. Excited for this, my family needs guidance. Marianne felt a mix of pride and caution, knowing the discussion could touch raw nerves. Claire opened with a general reflection. In my experience, conflicts often arise when well-intentioned advice crosses into judgment. As siblings close in age or outlook, spouses may feel protective or threatened. It's important to approach differences with curiosity rather than criticism. Marianne added, agreed. I recall times when I felt judged by my in-laws for choices I made as a daughter-in-law. Recognizing that underlying fears like feeling sidelined or worrying for family reputation can help us respond with empathy. Sylvia chimed in. I learned that my initial disapproval of Marianne's decisions often stemmed from my own insecurities, fear of losing closeness with my son. Once I acknowledged that, conversations became more open. Midway, they addressed the pointed viewer question without naming anyone. Marianne paraphrased one common scenario. A sister-in-law questions parenting choices while the spouse hesitates to intervene. In such cases, setting gentle boundaries is key, expressing appreciation for concern, then clarifying your own approach. If the spouse remains silent, it may help to have a private conversation, emphasizing mutual respect rather than blame. Claire supplemented, it can also help to find common ground, shared priorities for the child's well-being, so discussions feel collaborative, not adversarial. The chat responded with gratitude and applause emojis, indicating the guidance resonated broadly. As the panel proceeded, Patricia noticed a surge of comments from someone using a handle, hinting at a family member. They praised the advice, but also hinted at deeper resentments, asking if it was ever appropriate to pause contact when conflict becomes harmful. Marianne addressed this thoughtfully. Sometimes limiting interaction temporarily may protect emotional health. It's about balance, maintaining respect, but not at the cost of your well-being. Clear communication about the reasons for space, offered with kindness, keeps the door open for future dialogue. This nuanced answer prompted many supportive messages, but Marianne felt a pang, suspecting the question's origin lay closer to home. perhaps an unresolved rift in their extended family. After concluding the session with encouragement to seek professional mediation in severe conflicts, Marianne thanked Claire and Sylvia. As the live stream ended, Emma shared analytics high engagement, many new subscribers, and messages promising to try suggested strategies. Tom celebrated quietly in the next room. Marianne exhaled, relief mingling with lingering concern, though the discussion was constructive. It had surfaced difficult themes that might echo within her own family. That evening, Marianne received a private message from Claire. Some relatives reached out, expressing discomfort that we aired these scenarios. They felt uneasy, though they also appreciated the general advice. I reassured them our intent was to provide tools, not expose personal matters. But we may face awkward family conversations soon. Marianne replied, "Thank you for handling that. We'll be prepared to listen if they reach out. Our priority remains healing, even if it takes time and patience." Later, Sylvia called Marianne. I watched the panel and felt proud. Yet I also felt unsettled. Fears I thought resolved resurfaced when discussing sibling-in-law tensions. I realized I need to continue examining my reactions in private. Marianne comforted her. "This is natural. Growth often involves revisiting old feelings. You're not alone, many are learning alongside you." Their candid exchange reinforced the truth that healing is iterative. As Marianne prepared for bed, she reflected on the day's events. They had offered valuable guidance to many, but also risked stirring unsettled feelings both in their audience and within their own circle. She recognized that their platform's authenticity required navigating these ethical nuances, balancing openness with sensitivity to privacy. She picked up her knitting needles and began a simple garter stitch, the repetitive rhythm calming her mind. Each row felt like a meditation on patience, some stitches tight, some loose, much like family dynamics. She resolved to remain vigilant, ready to support relatives who might reach out with discomfort, prepared to reinforce boundaries if needed, and committed to her and Sylvia's shared mission. As the quiet click of needles filled the room, Marianne felt both the weight and promise of their journey, guiding others through complex relationships while tending carefully to her own. With each stitch, she wove resilience and compassion into the fabric of her life and work, ready to face whatever challenges Part 8 would bring together with her family, one deliberate stitch at a time. A sharp wind rattled the window panes of Marianne Holt's study as she reviewed incoming messages the morning after the sibling-in-law live stream. While much of the feedback was heartfelt praise, a handful of comments came from relatives voicing discomfort. They felt the discussion had edged too close to personal matters. Marianne pressed her fingertips to her temples, aware that navigating these reactions would require both tact and resolve. She closed her laptop and descended to the kitchen, where the aroma of freshly brewed tea mingled with the faint scent of cinnamon from yesterday's baking. Tom was preparing breakfast, and Emma joined moments later, carrying her notebook filled with viewer feedback. Over toast and tea, they discussed next steps. Emma suggested drafting a general statement, acknowledging concerns about privacy. They would clarify that the panels used hypothetical scenarios and shared their own experiences, only to illustrate principles, not expose family secrets. Marianne nodded, grateful for Emma's calm guidance. Tom offered to personally reach out to closer relatives who might feel unsettled, explaining their intentions and listening empathetically. Though the prospect of those conversations made Marianne's chest tighten, she recognized it as essential to maintaining genuine trust within the family. Later that day, Marianne called her cousin Lillian, who had voiced unease privately. Their conversation was gentle but honest. Lillian admitted feeling conflicted, grateful for guidance, yet anxious that more personal stories might be revealed. Marianne reassured her future discussions would emphasize boundaries and anonymized examples. Lillian's relief was palpable, and Marianne felt a measure of hope by acknowledging discomfort and adjusting their approach. They could keep the platform's mission intact while honoring privacy. That afternoon, Marianne prepared for the next collaborative session with Sylvia, a joint video exploring when apologies aren't enough, focusing on scenarios where repeated hurt requires deeper healing strategies. As she arranged ingredients and set up lighting, a surprise message arrived from Sylvia. She had been informed that Patricia, despite her behind-the-scenes role, had shared details of the platform's internal discussions with another family member, hoping to seek advice on unrelated personal matters. Sylvia's concern was that Patricia's eagerness might inadvertently spread confidences beyond intended boundaries, risking renewed misunderstandings. Marianne's heart jolted. This breach, though likely unintentional, threatened the fragile trust they had built. She took a steadying breath and drafted a response to Sylvia. They needed to address this, carefully clarify expectations with Patricia, and reinforce confidentiality. That evening, Marianne video called Patricia. On screen, Patricia appeared apologetic, her eyes downcast. Marianne spoke with measured warmth. Patricia, I understand you wanted to help and sought guidance, but some details shared were sensitive to Sylvia and our process. We need to agree on clear boundaries. Internal discussions stay within our core group unless everyone involved consents to share further. Can we agree to that? Patricia nodded, voice soft. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was overstepping. I want to rebuild trust. Marianne added, your contributions are valuable, and this clarity will help you continue helping behind the scenes without risk. Let's define a checklist of what can be shared externally and what remains private. Patricia agreed, and Marianne felt relief tempered by vigilance. Trust could be rebuilt only through consistent respect for boundaries. With that settled, Marianne turned to the upcoming session with Sylvia. They met virtually to plan their segment. The topic, when apologies aren't enough, felt weighty. Both had to draw on their own journey with Patricia and past hurts to illustrate points. As they discussed, Sylvia's expression grew reflective. I recall times when a simple, I'm sorry, felt hollow until I demonstrated change through actions. But there were moments I wondered if reconciliation was possible at all. Marianne added, our story showed that apologies must be paired with tangible steps, consistent behavior, setting realistic expectations, and allowing time for wounds to heal. But some viewers may face situations where repeated apologies still fail to bridge gaps. We need to offer tools for self-care and boundary setting in those cases. Their conversation deepened, weaving personal vulnerability with practical guidance. On the day of recording, Marianne arranged the kitchen counter with simplicity, a steaming pot of spiced apple cider, a single bouquet of chrysanthemums, and 2 chairs positioned for a candid dialogue. Emma joined behind the camera, ready to cue topics and monitor viewer comments in real time. Tom lingered nearby to handle technical support if needed. As the live stream began, Marianne introduced the theme today. Sylvia and I explore how to move forward when apologies alone cannot mend a rift. Sylvia appeared composed but carried a hint of gravity, reflecting the depth of the subject. They opened by recounting how Marianne's initial apology to Sylvia for past misunderstandings, while heartfelt, needed follow-up actions demonstrating care across distance, involving Sylvia in projects and consistently checking in without defensiveness. Sylvia then shared preparing her own apology to Marianne for believing rumors, emphasizing that admitting fault required overcoming pride and fear. The chat swelled with empathetic messages. Viewers commended their honesty and asked how to handle repeated offenses when trust felt fragile. Mid-discussion, a viewer question appeared. What if I forgive someone, but can't forget a betrayal? How do I live with residual pain? Marianne paused, feeling the weight of that enduring hurt. She responded, it's natural to carry scars even after reconciliation. Forgiveness doesn't erase memory, rather, it changes how we relate to it. You can acknowledge pain, perhaps through journaling or therapy, while choosing not to let it control your response. Over time, residual pain may soften, but might never fully vanish. The goal is to integrate it into your story without letting it define future interactions. Sylvia added, "I still recall the sting of that forged letter, but each step we took together helped me reframe it as an opportunity for growth. Remnants of hurt remain, but they no longer dictate my feelings toward Marianne." The sincerity in their voices resonated deeply with viewers. After the live stream concluded, Marianne and Sylvia reviewed feedback. Many expressed gratitude, a few noted the heaviness of the topic. Emma suggested offering follow-up resources, a list of local counseling services, recommended books on trauma and forgiveness, and a private forum for deeper discussion. Marianne agreed, acknowledging that some issues demand professional support was essential. Tom confirmed he would update their website with these resources and handle any inquiries. Later that evening, as Marianne tidied her knitting nook, she reflected on the session and Patricia's recent overreach. Trust, she realized, was an ongoing process. Each breach, however inadvertent, needed addressing through clear communication and compassionate firmness. The platform's success hinged on modeling these very behaviors. As autumn's final leaves drifted past her window, she felt the weight of responsibility to her family, to contributors like Patricia, and to the many viewers seeking guidance. That night, a message arrived from Claire. "We've had more relatives reach out, some quietly testing how far we'll share. They ask if next topics might include financial disputes or inheritance tensions." Marianne recognized the delicate terrain ahead. Family issues often crossed into deeply personal areas like money or legacy. Addressing such topics risked exposing fresh wounds. She drafted a response, acknowledged the importance of those issues, but proposed framing them as hypothetical scenarios, ensuring anonymity and focusing on general principles rather than specific family histories. Claire agreed, and they planned for a future module on money matters and family bonds, to be handled with utmost sensitivity. Before sleep, Marianne sat by the window with her knitting, creating a lace pattern that seemed to mirror the intricate weaving of relationships, open spaces for breath, intertwined loops requiring careful attention. She thought of Sylvia's courage, Patricia's tentative steps toward redemption, Emma's unwavering support, and Tom's steady presence. Their journey had moved from confronting deceit to modeling healthy reconciliation, yet the path remained winding as new topics emerged: financial disputes, inheritance concerns, blended family challenges. They would need the same blend of empathy, boundaries, and honesty. As she placed the final stitch on her swatch, Marianne whispered to herself, "One careful stitch at a time." With that resolve, she set down her needles and allowed sleep to come, ready to face the complexities of Part 9, guiding others through ever deeper family challenges while nurturing the trust she and her loved ones had so carefully rebuilt. Early winter's hush settled over Marianne Holt's neighborhood as she prepared for the next family recipe exchange module, Money Matters and Family Bonds. The topic weighed heavily on her mind: inheritance disputes, financial expectations, and uneven contributions often spark deep rifts in families. In recent days, Marianne and Claire had heard from several relatives uneasy about airing such sensitive issues. Yet many viewers requested guidance on navigating money-related conflicts without permanently damaging relationships. As Marianne brewed a pot of chamomile tea in her kitchen, the warm steam felt both comforting and a reminder of the delicate warmth they needed to foster within their own family. Later that morning, Marianne convened with Emma and Tom at the newly leased studio. The exposed brick walls glowed softly in the natural light, streaming through large windows dusted with frost. Emma laid out feedback notes. Several viewers asked, "How do I talk to siblings who feel I got more inheritance?" Or, "My in-laws expect me to contribute financially, but don't respect my boundaries." Tom brought in a tray of freshly baked scones, and their aroma mingled with the faint scent of pine from the holiday wreath on the door, reminding Marianne how traditions often intersect with money and emotion. Marianne began, "We must approach money matters and family bonds with sensitivity. Financial topics tap into deep values, security, fairness, legacy, and can resurrect old wounds." Emma nodded, adding, "We'll frame scenarios hypothetically and stress anonymity. We'll share general principles rather than specific family stories to respect privacy while offering concrete strategies." Tom supported we can include segments on active listening, transparent communication, and setting boundaries around money, like clearly stating what you can or cannot afford and how to express that kindly. Marianne felt a mix of anticipation and apprehension. Creating the content was one thing, applying it to her own family's undercurrents would be another. That afternoon, Marianne video called Sylvia to refine the module. Sylvia, seated by her kitchen window overlooking bare-branched oaks, greeted Marianne with a soft smile but visible concern. Marianne explained the outline start with understanding emotional attachments to money, then communicating financial boundaries, followed by addressing inheritance expectations with compassion, and finally, when to seek mediation or professional advice. Sylvia listened, then shared in our family subtle expectations around supporting aging parents once surfaced some expected financial help, and tensions arose when contributions felt unequal. "I recall feeling guilt when I couldn't give more," Marianne replied empathetically. "That vulnerability can resonate widely. We can normalize acknowledging limitations and valuing non-monetary contributions, time, emotional support, shared traditions." Sylvia suggested adding a segment on recognizing diverse forms of contribution, highlighting that not every family member can or should give money, but can offer other meaningful support. Marianne agreed, grateful for Sylvia's insight. As they planned recording logistics, Marianne's phone buzzed with a private message from Claire. A distant cousin reached out, upset about perceived unfairness in an inheritance matter. He asked for advice. "I think he expects me to intervene. Should I refer him to our upcoming module?" Marianne paused. This was a real-life test of their content. She responded, "Yes, invite him to watch the module when released, but clarify we can share general strategies, not personal legal counsel. Encourage him to discuss directly with siblings, perhaps with a neutral mediator." Claire replied, "Understood. It's awkward but worth trying." Marianne recognized that integrating real family queries into their planning lent authenticity, yet demanded caution to avoid overstepping boundaries or revealing private details. That evening, Marianne set up the studio for recording. The counter displayed a simple centerpiece, a bowl of mixed nuts and dried fruit, symbols of variety and balance, alongside a printed infographic titled "Forms of Family Contribution." Emma tested the camera, ensuring Marianne and Sylvia would appear side by side in split screen. Tom prepared to handle any technical hiccups. As Marianne settled into her chair, knitting needles, idly looping a swatch of neutral gray yarn to calm her nerves, she reflected on how deeply entwined money and emotion can be. Gratitude, guilt, entitlement, rivalry, all could surface. When the live stream began, comments quickly flowed. "Thank you for tackling this. I've avoided talking about inheritance for years." Marianne introduced the session today. Sylvia and I discuss how financial issues, inheritance, contributions, expectations can strain relationships, and how to approach these conversations with empathy and clarity. Sylvia appeared composed, her voice steady. "I'll share my own reflections on feelings of guilt and the importance of transparency early on." They started with emotional attachments. Marianne spoke gently about how money often symbolizes love or approval in families, and how unspoken expectations can fester. A child may feel loved when given an allowance, but if that stops abruptly, resentment can arise. Sylvia nodded. I realized I once equated financial support with care when I couldn't provide as much as siblings. I felt inadequate and allowed that insecurity to taint my view of others' choices. The chat lit up with empathic responses, viewers sharing similar feelings, thanking them for naming these hidden dynamics. Next, they addressed communicating boundaries. Marianne recommended using I statement C. G. I'm currently unable to contribute financially, but I want to support in other ways, such as weekly visits or managing practical tasks. They role-played a hypothetical scenario. Sylvia asked Marianne how to respond if a sibling demanded more than one could give. Marianne modeled a calm, respectful response, and Emma, monitoring chat, highlighted positive viewer reactions, praising the straightforward examples. Then came the thorny topic of inheritance expectations. Marianne prefaced legal advice is best sought from professionals, but emotionally, families benefit when discussions happen openly before wills are finalized. Sylvia added, I regretted not initiating a conversation with my siblings about our parents' estate. Early silence bred rumors and hurt. They recommended hold a family meeting with a clear agenda, perhaps facilitated by a neutral third-party family counselor or mediators, so that everyone's perspectives are aired respectfully. They cautioned about cultural or generational sensitivities. Some families avoid discussing money, so framing the meeting around preserving unity and preventing misunderstandings can ease discomfort. During this segment, a viewer question appeared. What if a family member refuses to discuss inheritance planning, insisting it's too morbid? Marianne responded, acknowledge their discomfort, express respect for their feelings, then share your perspective. Planning can prevent conflict later. You might propose a written discussion or involve a neutral advisor. If they still refuse, document your own wishes and maintain openness for future dialogue when they feel ready. The chat displayed gratitude and relief at having concrete suggestions. Finally, they covered recognizing diverse contributions. Sylvia emphasized that providing emotional support, caregiving, and preserving family traditions carry immense value alongside financial gifts. Marianne noted we can honor each person's strengths. Someone may not contribute money, but offers invaluable time, advice, or acts of service. They invited viewers to reflect on their family's unique circumstances, encouraging gratitude practices, acknowledging each member's non-monetary contributions to foster respect and reduce resentment. As they wrapped up, Emma highlighted upcoming resources, a downloadable guide summarizing key points, and a list of recommended mediators and legal professionals for viewers seeking further help. Tom prepared to post these links on their website. The live stream concluded with warm thanks and a reminder, navigating money and family bonds is challenging, but with empathy, clear communication, and professional support when needed, families can preserve unity. When the session ended, Marianne exhaled heavily. She and Sylvia reviewed the feedback, mostly positive, with a few private messages from relatives, expressing tentative relief at having a framework to address long-standing unspoken issues. But there were also cautious notes. Some wondered if Marianne and Sylvia's own family would now face scrutiny about their inheritance planning. Marianne glanced at her own husband, Ethan, later that evening. Do you think our family should discuss our own estate plans openly? Ethan considered yes. We've held back to avoid awkwardness, but modeling transparency could prevent misunderstandings among siblings and future generations. Marianne nodded, recognizing that they themselves needed to apply the advice they'd given others. That night, Marianne sat by the window knitting, a soft scarf in progress. Outside, the first snowflakes drifted against the dark sky, each flake unique yet part of a larger pattern, much like individual family members within the broader tapestry. She felt both comforted and daunted. A real conversation about estate planning awaited with Ethan and Claire, and possibly Sylvia's siblings. They would need to schedule a family meeting, perhaps engage a mediator. The very act might surface buried tensions, but avoiding it risked worse fractures. Marianne placed a final stitch and set aside her needles. Tomorrow, she would approach Ethan about arranging a family discussion, acknowledging that modeling openness could deepen trust, but also reveal uncomfortable truths. Yet she felt ready. Their journey had prepared them to face difficult conversations with empathy and clear boundaries. As she closed her eyes, the gentle image of intertwined cables on her knitting swatch reminded her that, like yarn, family ties require attentive weaving, sometimes loosening knots, sometimes reinforcing strands to create a resilient whole. Marianne Holt awoke to a pale winter morning, the first light glinting off frost-laced windows. Her thoughts turned immediately to the family meeting she and Ethan had agreed to arrange a conversation about their estate plans and how to include wider relatives in transparent dialogue. The air inside their home felt still, as if bracing for what lay ahead. Over the past weeks, Marianne had guided others through money-related conflicts. Now she needed to apply those principles within her own family. Later that day, Marianne and Ethan sat together at the kitchen table, the surface strewn with notebooks, a printed outline for the meeting, and the softly steaming mugs of tea they clutched. Marianne reviewed the agenda opening with shared intentions, preserving unity and preventing future misunderstandings, then discussing everyone's comfort levels, potential contributions, and options for a mediated conversation among siblings and cousins. Ethan listened, adding legal clarifications how wills could be structured to reflect fairness and how non-financial, legacy-like family traditions or heirlooms could be honored. They spoke in measured tones, aware that their own calm would set the tone for relatives. That evening, Marianne video called Sylvia to discuss inviting Sylvia's siblings. Sylvia's face appeared against the warm backdrop of her sitting room, a gentle lamp casting soft shadows. Marianne opened. Mother, Ethan, and I planned to invite family to a facilitated discussion about estate and legacy to avoid assumptions or hurt feelings later. Would you feel comfortable extending the invitation to your siblings? Sylvia paused, eyes thoughtful. I admit I've avoided this topic for years. There were unspoken tensions about inheritance when our parents passed, but I see the value in openness. Let's propose it carefully, emphasizing our aim preserving family bonds more than any material division. Marianne felt relief at Sylvia's willingness. They agreed to draft a respectful invitation letter, offering the option to decline without pressure. Over the next days, Ethan coordinated with Claire to finalize the invitation, while Marianne crafted a heartfelt message highlighting shared memories, the desire to honor their parents' wishes, and the intention to hold the conversation with a neutral mediator. Emma assisted by designing a simple PDF outlining meeting guidelines, confidentiality, respectful listening, and framing the discussion around values rather than fixed outcomes. When the invitations were sent, Marianne and Ethan felt a mix of anticipation and nervousness. Some relatives responded immediately with gratitude. Others hesitated, and a few declined outright, citing discomfort or scheduling conflicts. Marianne acknowledged that not everyone would engage, but those willing could set a new tone for the family. On the morning of the meeting, Marianne rose early to prepare. She arranged the dining room into a circle of chairs, placing a small bowl of mixed nuts and dried fruit in the center, a symbol of shared nourishment. Soft winter light filtered through curtains, and a quiet resolve settled in her chest. Ethan greeted her with a reassuring nod. Their home felt charged with purpose. One by one, relatives arrived: Claire and her husband, Sylvia's brother Matthew, and Sylvia's sister Louise, each carrying polite smiles mingled with underlying apprehension. The neutral mediatora family counselor recommended by Marianne entered with professional calm, briefly explaining the ground rules. Speak from personal perspective, listen without interruption, and focus on common values. Marianne felt her pulse steady as she introduced the intention. We gather not to debate entitlements, but to honor what our parents taught us about family unity and care. We hope this conversation can prevent misunderstandings and preserve our bonds. As the discussion began, Matthew spoke first. When our parents passed, there was confusion about how to divide heirlooms and support their care in their final years. I felt uncertain whether my efforts were recognized. Louise added, I recall feeling awkward about asking for clarification. I didn't want to seem ungrateful or greedy. Marianne listened, nodding empathetically, remembering similar dynamics she'd guided others through. When her turn came, she gently shared her perspective. Ethan and I want to ensure that any distribution reflects respect for everyone's contributions, financial or otherwise, and acknowledges the sentimental value of certain heirlooms. We also wish to clarify how we might involve future generations in family traditions. The mediator guided them to explore specific questions. What matters most to each person? Which items hold deep emotional resonance? How might support for elderly relatives be arranged in ways that feel equitable? Emotions surfaced. Louise choked back tears, describing a cherished family quilt she feared would slip from her branch of the family, while Matthew expressed regret that misunderstandings had once cooled his relationship with Sylvia. As they spoke, Marianne felt both the weight of past wounds and the uplifting sense of shared empathy emerging. The mediator encouraged concrete proposals, perhaps rotating certain heirlooms among cousins, or creating digital archives for family recipes and stories so all could share in heritage. They considered pooling resources to support elderly care or charitable donations in their parents' names, aligning with family values. Each suggestion sparked nods and tentative smiles. Midway through, an unanticipated tension arose. A cousin, joining by video call, hesitated, worried that financial contributions might overshadow those unable to give money. Marianne gently reiterated contributions take many forms: time spent caring, emotional support, preserving traditions. We value every form equally. The cousin, reassured, relaxed, and offered to lead a digital memorial project collecting photos and anecdotes for future generations. As the meeting drew to a close, the group agreed on a plan: a written framework outlining heirloom sharing, a rotating schedule for certain items, a family cookbook project preserving recipes from multiple branches, and a committee to coordinate any future discussions about support or inheritance. They committed to revisit these agreements annually, with the mediator facilitating if needed. The atmosphere shifted from cautious to collaborative, the earlier tension giving way to warmth and mutual respect. Marianne felt a profound sense of relief. The conversation had faced painful memories, yet resulted in clear steps toward unity. Afterward, as relatives departed with cordial embraces, Marianne and Sylvia exchanged a glance of shared accomplishment. In the quiet that followed, Marianne reflected on how the principles they had taught others, sympathy, clear communication, respectful boundaries, had guided their own family through this pivotal moment. She realized that healing extended beyond mother-in-law dynamics to encompass the wider kinship network, each relationship requiring care. That night, back in the study, Marianne took up her knitting needles, the soft click of stitches echoing the day's thoughtful weaving of perspectives. Though the meeting had gone well, she remained aware that agreements needed nurturing over time. Old insecurities could resurface and new challenges would arise. Yet she felt confident that their family had built a foundation of openness and empathy, a tapestry stronger for the collaborative effort. As she placed down her knitting and prepared for sleep, a gentle notification appeared on her phone. A viewer from the online platform thanked her for sharing the inheritance session, noting it had inspired them to initiate a similar family meeting. Marianne smiled, heart warmed by the ripple of positive impact. With that, she allowed herself rest, trusting that tomorrow would bring continued growth for her own family. And for those they guided, one careful stitch of understanding at a time. Winter's hush gradually yielded to the tender stirrings of early spring, and Marianne Holt's life settled into a new rhythm defined by both continuity and growth. In the weeks after the family meeting about inheritance and legacy, she noticed subtle shifts. Relatives who once skirted difficult conversations now greeted her with greater openness. Occasional check-ins about shared projects, like the family cookbook, became a source of gentle connection rather than awkward duty. Marianne recognized that the work of reconciliation was ongoing. A question might resurface, or new life events could test their agreements. But the foundation of candid dialogue and mutual respect gave everyone a compass to navigate future challenges. Each morning, Marianne rose to the familiar click of her knitting needles, a simple pattern in soft yarn, reflecting the steady persistence she had practiced throughout her journey. She often thought of how those loops mirrored family ties, individual stitches, distinct yet interwoven into a larger fabric that required attention and care. Sometimes she paused mid-stitch to send a quick message to Sylvia or Claire, sharing a memory sparked by a recipe or an insight drawn from a viewer's comment on their platform. These small gestures, once daunting, now felt natural expressions of connection. The family recipe exchange continued to flourish. New modules touched on blended family dynamics, caregiving across distances, and even celebrating milestones when life paths diverged. Marianne and Sylvia maintained their collaborative videos, occasionally joined by Claire or other relatives, always careful to frame discussions in hypothetical terms when needed and to uphold privacy. Patricia, now solidly established in her behind-the-scenes role, coordinated logistics and offered ideas when appropriate, mindful of boundaries they had agreed upon. Emma's marketing skills kept the platform evolving, integrating viewer feedback and partnering with local community groups for workshops. Tom balanced his support at home and in logistics with moments of respite, reminding Marianne of the importance of rest amid their commitments. Beyond the platform, Marianne and Ethan found themselves more aligned in planning for the future. Shared estate discussions had deepened trust, and the family cookbook project gave them a tangible legacy to pass on. When they visited Sylvia, the atmosphere was warmer ladder over shared meals, collaborative planning for upcoming events, and honest conversations about fears or hopes. Occasionally, an old insecurity would flicker, perhaps a throwaway remark recalling past misunderstandings, but they had learned to address these swiftly, acknowledging feelings and reaffirming mutual care. Marianne reflected on how far she had come from that tense dinner when a forged letter almost fractured her marriage. The journey had demanded resilience, empathy, and clear boundaries. It had revealed vulnerabilities, but also the transformative power of honesty. She felt gratitude for each person who joined the process, the family members willing to listen, the mediator who guided a pivotal meeting, the viewers who applied their lessons in their own lives, recognizing that healing often rippled outward beyond a single household. One quiet afternoon, Marianne sat by her window, knitting a lightweight shawl for an upcoming workshop with local seniors. Outside, cherry blossoms began to bloom, their petals drifting like gentle reminders of renewal. She considered the many stories she had heard, viewers who reconnected with distant relatives, who found courage to address long-avoided subjects, or who learned to honor diverse contributions beyond finances. These stories affirmed that the principles she and her family embody, empathy, transparent communication, and respect for boundaries, held universal relevance. As dusk settled, Marianne closed her knitting project and joined her family around the dinner table. They shared a simple meal, a stew flavored with herbs, symbolic of their shared efforts. Conversation flowed easily from updates on community workshops to lighthearted planning for a summer gathering. In their smiles and the comfortable rhythm of exchange, Marianne sensed the enduring strength of their bonds. Looking ahead, she knew new challenges would arise, shifting family dynamics, life changes, and unforeseen circumstances, but she felt equipped to face them with the same steady resolve. one careful stitch at a time. And as the first stars appeared in the evening sky, Marianne allowed herself a moment of quiet joy, trusting that the tapestry of relationships she had helped weave would continue to hold warmth and resilience for years to come.